So what we're here to find out is this corruption or not?
So Jared Kushner was a New York City rich kid, took over his daddy's business after Chris Christie threw him in the clink, and then he married Ivanka Trump. That is about all it took for him to get placed in one of the most powerful positions in the world, senior advisor to the President of the United States. One of the highest level jobs in the White House. Kushner had access to some of the nation's top intelligence. He dealt with all sorts of foreign governments, kind of parallel State Department, basically.
Hey, I mean, remove him out of the equation. I think a lot of people would have took that path to success if they could. You know what I'm saying? I'm just being honest. Be honest with yourself. He got a quick path to success.
He oversaw U.S. foreign policy in the Middle East because why not? He's my son-in-law. But his relationship with Saudi Arabia stood out in particular. And what happened 6 months after he left the government, when his private equity fund received $2 billion with a B from the Sovereign Investment Fund of Saudi Arabia, a fund chaired by the de facto leader, Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, or MBS. While Republicans continue to obsess over Hunter Biden, whether he traded on his last name for access and money, there's a real question as to why did Jared Kushner get like billions of dollars from MBS? And some Democrats are saying, well, let's see that guy's laptop. Back in February, Congressman Jamie Raskin, ranking member of the Oversight Committee, sent a previously undisclosed letter to the Republican chair of the committee, James Comer, urging him to join an investigation Democrats opened up into Kushner. Comer ignored that letter. Today, Congressman Raskin is renewing that call, sending another letter to Comer asking for the chair to subpoena Kushner's investment firm, citing the, quote, glaring likely violations of American law. Congressman Jamie Raskin, Democrat of Maryland, serves the ranking member of the Oversight Committee, and he joins me now. Congressman, what are you after here with your colleague on this committee?
Well, we've been trying to get this information for more than a year, Chris. We know that Kushner pocketed $2 billion and a $25 million a year management fee from the Saudi government. And
this was after he left, right? Correct? This is after he left. How does that even happen? Like, if you think about most law firms in different places like that, I'm just using them as an example. Isn't there like a non-compete to where you can't really do that? You know, I don't want to say conflict of interest, but isn't there like when you leave somewhere, their clients are still their clients, and you leave, create like a business, and then you go and like poach? Normally, isn't there a non-compete? So how does something like this even happen? Chances is he probably found some type of clause that'll protect him that didn't have that type of, you know what I mean, wording in there to say that he couldn't poach or he couldn't go after or secure business dealings with them once he left.
The UAE and the Qatar government have also kicked in money. So there's more than $3 billion in there. We want to be able to reconstruct what exactly those countries got out of it. Remember that the Saudi Arabian Sovereign Wealth Fund advisors recommended against giving that money to Jared Kushner on the grounds that he was inexperienced and they were asking a ridiculous sum of money. And their advisors were overruled by the homicidal crown prince himself, Mohammed bin Salman, who, of course, had been essentially bailed out of his situation that he'd gotten himself into when he ordered the assassination of Jamal Khashoggi back in 2018. So, you know, the Trumps did a lot for them, and I think Donald Trump bragged about it, saying, in essence, he saved the prince's posterior multiple times, and he wanted to continually remind him of that. Well, we know that Jared Kushner created a business the day after the Trump administration ended, and within a few months he had brought home billions of dollars from the Saudi government. So we want all the information in the same way that the committee is going for all the information about Hunter Biden, who, after all, never worked for the government, was not in the Biden administration. He is the adult, emancipated son of President Biden. They want all that information. We should get the information about Jared Kushner, who's not just President Trump's son-in-law, but he was actually managing Middle East foreign policy at the time.
There's two details there that I had forgotten and one I didn't know.
Which is insane to hear, and still in all with no clearance, right?
I had forgotten the excoriating recommendation from the Oversight Committee being like, absolutely not. There's no reason to give this dude this money. That was overridden, we think, personally by MBS. I'd forgotten that crucial detail. I didn't know the $25 million management fee, or maybe I knew it. That you're meaning like, it's not just you get billions for your fund, but like the management fee that they're charging is a lot of money. And that's like basically direct income for the guy running it.
I mean, that looks like a straight up payoff to me, a quid pro quo. $25 million a year. I mean, like, that's the interest you would have basically on a $500 million that he's, pocketing directly from Mohammed bin Salman, who was obviously expressing his gratitude to the Trump administration for going there first in Trump's foreign travels, for the cover up of the assassination of Khashoggi, for tilting towards Saudi Arabia, in the Yemen war, and on and on. The Saudis basically got whatever they wanted. Now, the foreign emoluments clause, which we've talked about before, applies not just to the president, but anybody holding an office or trust under the federal government. So it's clear to me that if that $2 billion had gone to Kushner a few months before the administration was over, that would be a direct violation of the Foreign Emoluments Clause. I think it's the same thing if the deal was made during the administration and the money just shows up a few months later. It's like, somebody paying a bribe to a city councilman, but they say, well,
that's what I'm saying. Like, how can you not see this as corruption? Again, going back to them saying he's inexperienced, but yet he's going to get paid 24 M's, 24, 25, or whatever it is. I don't think an M being off an M really changes anything. Gosh.
Well, when you step down from office, that's when you'll get paid. That's still a bribe.
Right, but just to be clear, I mean, that's a huge difference. You guys don't have evidence in your hands that happened, right? I mean, like, just to be clear, like, there's tons of American officials that leave their position and go make a lot of money from all kinds of foreign governments, like, and defense contractors and all kinds of people in that town.
I don't see how. Again, I would always, and this is just me from the outside looking in. You know what I mean? I would think that would be like, there should be some stipulation for a certain amount of time. There should be a certain amount of time there before you can then speak to them. You know what I mean?
It's in the backdrop behind you. This is a particularly egregious example, but none of that's illegal per se. You're saying you want to see evidence such that you can convince yourself that didn't happen.
Well, there, if we're talking about statutory bribery laws or conflict of interest laws, but, I'm a purist and an originalist about the Foreign Government Emoluments Clause, which says that nobody who holds an office or trusts under the federal government shall receive from a king, a prince, or a foreign state a payment of any kind, whatever, without the explicit consent of Congress. So even if we didn't know about an explicit quid pro quo, if he had gotten that money while he was in office, it would clearly violate the Foreign Emoluments Clause. And I think that, if the deal was made and he got it later, to me, that's a distinction without a difference.
All right, Congressman Jamie Raskin. I have to say, Congressman, I do miss the bandana, but I am very happy to see you looking so well. Thanks for joining us.
In the category of things we watch so you don't have to, Donald Trump has spent most of the day raging, absolutely raging on social media. And a focus of his ire today is New York Attorney General Letitia James. It is because next month, on October 2nd, Donald Trump will go on trial in the civil lawsuit brought against him, his family, and his business by Attorney General James. She was to bar them from running the company and is seeking a $250 million fine for allegedly inflating the value of the company's assets by as much as $2.2 billion a year. AG James is requesting a summary judgment in the case based on what she calls, quote, the mountain of undisputed evidence in the case. Meanwhile, Democrats on the House Oversight Committee have some questions of their own about another source of revenue and extreme wealth in the Trump family. Ranking member Jamie Raskin is asking the Republican chairman, James Comer, who seems very concerned about the business dealings of children of presidents, especially the current president's son, who's never worked for the United States government. He's asked him to subpoena the investment firm run by Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner. Jared Kushner received a staggering $2 billion, with a B, dollar investment from Saudi Arabia and other Middle Eastern countries after he quit the Trump White House. Joining our coverage of this, Democratic Congressman Robert Garcia of California. He's a member of the House Oversight Committee and of the House Homeland Security Committee. Tim O'Brien is with us as well. Congressman, I start with you. You've got an incredible body of news reporting. I think the New York Times has reported on the fact that Jared Kushner got so much more than Steve Mnuchin when Jared Kushner did not have as successful of a record in the business arena as Steve Mnuchin. You've also got former Trump insiders, people like his final chief, or not final, but I guess his second chief of staff, John Kelly, saying that even inside the White House, there were questions about what Jared Kushner was doing some of the time. So tell me about this effort at this point to dig into the ex-president's son-in-law, Jared Kushner's business dealings.
Absolutely. Well, thanks. I mean, look, I think it's very clear. You have Jared Kushner, who worked on Middle East policy, who was the lead person in the Trump White House when it came to working within the Middle East and Saudi Arabia. And a few months after office and a few months after he leaves the White House, he's receiving $2 billion plus from the Saudi government. So if there isn't smoke there, I don't know what else could be worse. I mean, we're looking at a situation here where the Oversight Committee is really serious about what the Kushners did, how they received the $2 billion plus, what he actually did to receive that money. And so
I don't think he did nothing. I think it's just a favor for Trump. Like you said, Trump was just awing over the fact of how many times he saved that guy's life. You know what I mean? Or literally, not literally in a sense, but just saying, you know what I mean? What I've done for you. This sounds like payment back for what Trump may have done for them. That's what it sounds like to me. You know what I mean? Or anybody from the outside looking in would say the same thing.
The letter and our effort, led by Chair Raskin on our end, is to ensure that we get the facts on what happened. We want to subpoena the documents. We want to ensure and see how did Kushner receive so much money right after he left, and what did he do to actually get those services? And so, well, we think this is a pretty serious issue. I think that Comer himself has said that he thinks it may have crossed the ethical line. And so our request is pretty simple. Let's see the documents, let's subpoena the documents, and let's find out why the Saudi Arabian government paid the Kushners $2 billion after leaving the White House.
You know, I went down to the Trump White House exactly one time, but it was the day that Jared Kushner was briefing the press about Donald Trump's first foreign trip. And I ran into him in a hallway, and he was beaming about the strategy of taking Donald Trump to Saudi Arabia first. He was also known to have text using WhatsApp and other encrypted messaging systems with Middle Eastern leaders for the duration of the presidency. Will you seek to subpoena those WhatsApp messages and really understand the entirety of the relationship between Kushner and the leaders he communicated with directly?
I mean, absolutely. I mean, he was probably beaming, thinking about all the money he was going to make and grift off the American people. And all the documents that are available to us, we want to be able to get access to. You know, it's pretty interesting that the House Republican majority, especially the Oversight Committee, are obsessed with a private citizen, Hunter Biden, and his business dealings, yet are unwilling to focus the seriousness of this issue on someone that actually worked inside the White House.
And I know they said earlier, you know what I mean, this is no comparison to Hunter Biden, but at the same time, this does feel like tit for tat. You know what I mean? Don't get me wrong. They do have legitimate reasons to subpoena those records and get the information and different things like that they want. But let me ask you, if Hunter Biden's situation had not been going on, would this still be brought up? Because it seems like tit for tat at the same time. Just being honest. What do y'all think, though? I have to ask.
Yeah. Do you have any interest from your Senate colleagues, who obviously are in the majority over there, to run investigations in any of their oversight committees?
Yeah, I mean, those discussions are happening. I think, obviously, Jamie Raskin is engaged in those conversations. So is our committee. We think there is, and we've heard some of the senators already kind of share some of their concerns. But we're really concerned on the House side, and we're really concerned on the Oversight Committee. And this is just a pattern of the way the Kushners have financially benefited from their jobs inside the White House, and they continue to attack the president's family, who have not worked a job in the White House, who have not been paid by the White House, yet they can't and will not hold accountable the Kushners, who clearly have some huge scheme and are enriching themselves by billions of dollars from Middle East governments.
You know, Tim O'Brien, the ex-president does such a volume business of scandal that I feel like it was sometimes hard for the press and Democrats and ethical people to look in any one place for long. But Jared Kushner was doing what Jared Kushner was doing the whole time. Are you surprised that it didn't get attention before this?
Well, I do think, I think we talked about it a couple of years ago, Nicole, about Kushner specifically in the Saudi investment. It's, I think the issue with Jared Kushner is that he is so ignorant and unschooled that people to some degree expected him to be harmless. And the reality was he was in a White House that was making policy, particularly foreign policy. And I think he had his own eyes set on what he was going to do when he left the White House. Jared Kushner, like Donald Trump, his professional life and most of his life overall was helped along by his father's wealth. He has never really achieved very much on his own. And then suddenly he leaves the White House, a man with absolutely no hardball investment experience. When people invest $1 billion like they did with Steve Mnuchin, or $2 billion like they did with Jared Kushner, they expect to see a track record because they want a return on their money. Jared Kushner is not somebody any well-heeled, savvy investor is going to give that kind of money to unless they think there's other things to be gained from outside of an investment return. They already knew from his time in the White House that the Trump White House had overridden Congress's opposition to a Saudi arms deal. The Trump White House soft-pedaled pressing the Saudis on Jamal Khashoggi's murder. So there were clearly possible quid pro quos while he was in the White House. He's now, after leaving the White House, he gets this windfall of investment money, I think because the Saudis were placing their bets on the possibility that Donald Trump might come into the White House again, and they'd have an easy mark in Jared Kushner. I think there's a money trail that can be followed there, as you've asked. There's possibly a communications trail. I think it should cloud anything Kushner does for the campaign, Trump's campaign. The possibility that Jared Kushner will be in the White House again, this has to weigh heavily on that, because it's a deep national security problem on top of being an ethical quagmire. And as Congressman Garcia mentioned, it's more than passing strange that the GOP is intent on tarring Hunter Biden with some of these allegations when the proof, or at least the evidence of stuff that's much more problematic with Jared Kushner, hasn't been equally probed.
Congressman, really quick last question. Do you plan to call Rex Tillerson, who was rather famously and publicly humiliated by Jared Kushner pulling the rug out from under him when he was the country's Secretary of State?
We'd love to. I mean, absolutely. I think that there's a lot there, and there's definitely a history of not just Jared Kushner, but the family, including Ivanka, including Donald Trump, in benefiting from foreign investments and foreign intervention. So it is an ethical issue, but also a national security issue. I completely agree, and we'd love to hear from him.